Hi gang, Rob here. It is the afternoon of December 2019. Coming to you today with the fourth installment in my Geezer Rant series of videos. I think we're going to call this one Patronizing Politicians and Irresponsible Citizens. You know, I've been thinking a little bit over the last few weeks about the terms that our elected officials, especially on the national stage, use when they refer to the electorate and how those terms have changed over the years. I've been voting for about 35, 36 years. I've been interested in politics and politically aware for even longer than that. I remember the first politician that caught my attention, whom I listened to quite a bit, was the great Ronald Reagan. And he would refer to the people with a term that most politicians used back in the 70s and 80s. He called us my fellow Americans. In that same time, the people were referred to by politicians as the taxpayers. And what are we called today? Well, there are two terms that have made the rounds over the last few years, and both of them are a little offensive to me, and I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll tell you why. Everyday Americans, the first one. The second, working families. So we got four terms. Back in the day, we had fellow Americans and taxpayers. Today, we have everyday Americans and working families. Let's talk about the implications of those terms. Fellow Americans. That was the President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, referring to the people who voted for him, and even those who didn't, people who participated in this experiment we call the United States of America. He referred to them using that term, my fellow Americans, as equals. As equals. My fellow Americans. And then we had the term taxpayers used to refer to the American people. The implication there is these are the people who pay my salary. They are my employer. Those terms and others like them when I was a kid growing up were used by public servants who understood that they serve at the pleasure of the people. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that those terms weren't used in a patronizing fashion. Even 40 years ago, there was a deep state. There was an entrenched political and bureaucratic class that deceived us regularly and perpetuated their own power. And as the terms changed, it's not so much that the world changed, but certainly the brazen attitude, the condescension with which politicians openly referred to us started to change. Let's look at those two new terms, everyday Americans. Not elite Americans, not the special Americans, not the movers and shakers, the people who really run the country, but everyday Americans, run-of-the-mill folks. The marks, if you will, to use a professional wrestling term or a con game term. We're the marks. Yeah. And then working families, the bourgeois, the plebeian class who actually have to go to work every day to exist, who aren't beneficiaries of other people's money taken from them in a compulsory fashion by a federal government that has lost its understanding of what the scope of government was supposed to be. Our politicians now brazenly, unabashedly refer to us as essentially the morons who keep paying for them to live lavish lives of privilege on our dime. And they live those lives with absolutely no respect for us. We're not working families. We're not everyday Americans. We are the governing authority. We are the governing authority. It's probably time that we hitch up our suspenders, put our boots on, and remember what makes this country go. And that's each of us determining our path, realizing our potential, and working hard in a capitalistic free enterprise system to be successful. When we all do that, our country is successful. And it's also time that we realized we're the boss. We are the governing authority. And when our politicians start to show us that they don't respect that organizational chart, it's time for us to throw the bums out. But we're not very good at all that, are we? Back in the late 18th century, when our founding fathers were setting up the framework of this country, Benjamin Franklin uttered an ominous quotation, and I'm going to try to get this right if I can. When the people find that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic. You see, our federal government was never designed to be a clearinghouse for our money, which they collect, take a huge cut of, and then redistribute amongst us as they see fit. That was never the constitutionally designed function of the federal government. To this day, our elected officials, representatives in Congress, and our president take an oath by which they pledge to defend the Constitution of the United States. They don't take an oath that says, I'm going to collect as much pork for my district as I can. They don't take an oath that says they will faithfully administer the financial system of the United States. They don't take an oath that says we will pass a farm bill every year. They certainly don't take an oath that says that they will put themselves in charge of our healthcare system. Our federal government exists for a few very basic things and has its powers curtailed and limited to an amazing degree by our Constitution. Our federal government exists to provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, not dispense the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves, the old guys, and our posterity, us. That's it. The bulk of governance was designed to fall at the local and state level. The federal government was just supposed to herd the cats, so to speak. Keep the states pulling in the same direction. Our legislators were designed to be part-time people in their legislative function who received per diem allowances while Congress and the House and the Senate were in session. Our president was designed to be a fairly weak head of state. We were supposed to take care of ourselves and each other as we saw fit. I know that this plea will fall on deaf ears, and some people are going to listen to what I'm saying and watching this video, and then they're going to go, what on earth is he talking about? What country does he live in? Yeah, that's how far down the rabbit hole we are. And by the way, Epstein did not kill himself. Grace to you and peace, my friend.